Does everything have a bright side to it? Of course. Doesn't always outweigh the negatives, but everything has a bright side to it. This makes happiness a choice. And here we say that the discipline of being happy is the ultimate discipline. With that said, welcome to the Ultimate Discipline Podcast, where we meet with people who are practitioners of this exact discipline, and we hear their cool stories of cultivating happiness through challenges in their life. I am your host, Sean Greenspan. Let's get to it.
Hey, Peter. Thanks for joining the show today.
Hey, Sean, thanks for having me. Appreciate it. It's good to be here.
Oh, absolutely. It's been a little bit since we've had a good chance to catch up. What's going on in your world?
Yeah, exciting time for us. We're we've been around now for 11 years, scaling up, and we're kind of looking now to invest in some new products kind of outside your typical bar category, more kind of in the protein snack sector, still working on simplicity. But that's what's new. And then I have an 18-month-old daughter, so a lot on my plate right now.
Yeah, it sounds like it. And hey, for those that don't know, like kind of what you're into, you mind, giving a little rundown of what you do and what the company stands for?
Of course. So I own a protein bar company called Rise Bar. We're based in Southern California. Our entire focus is simplicity, kind of taking a minimalist approach to athletic nutrition. So all of our bars have over 15 grams of protein. We have fewer than 5 ingredients. This less is more focus. We found that a lot of our consumers appreciate that from kind of a clean label and also digestion. The less ingredients you have in your body, the more likely it is that you're going to have great digestion. So we've always kind of had that ethos pretty much for anyone, but we do really focus on the active lifestyle, people who can appreciate a clean label and just 3 or 4 ingredients in a high protein format.
Oh, that's amazing, man. What's the story about how you kind of got this company going? Because that's it's pretty good service you're putting out there.
Yeah, I've always been an athlete, sports as a young kid and still follow a pretty rigorous regimen. And for me personally, I always felt like I had a sensitive stomach. And so even growing up, I think my mom would cook a lot of very simple dishes, never more than just a few ingredients. For my own kind of protein content throughout college, grad school, in my 20s, I knew that in order to get the best nutrition, you either have a scoop of whey protein, which can be kind of a pain to lug around, or I would have these little protein balls, which is essentially just whey isolate, almond butter, or any kind of nut butter you want, and then adding a little bit of honey to it, coconut nectar, whatever sweetener you want, agave. And so it's kind of that simplicity has been a focus of mine for a while. And I felt like there was a void in the market kind of back in 2011, that where there was no other kind of protein snack where you could find that kind of level of protein with simplicity, and also you want to have obviously a great flavor.
Yeah, dude, that's amazing. So you're kind of I find that the best ideas come from people that are living it themselves. Like you're almost like solving a need that you have, and of course now lots of people, millions of your customers have had a chance to try it. So that's pretty exciting. I'll tell you, right before this episode, I told my girlfriend that I was getting ready for it, and she has gut related issues, and nothing serious, but a lot of insensitivities, right? A lot of, if she eats certain things, might not feel like she can perform highly, or we're traveling, how do I get protein on the go? And I'm not trying to plug your company or put you guys on right now, but I am done with protein bars besides Rise, and I'm being serious because mine are just new rules. Like if I can't understand it, right? If I don't even know what's on the label, I'm not gonna consume it. And I'm definitely not a nutritionist, definitely not like that. But I understand a nutrition label and ingredients pretty deeply. So I really respect kind of what you're doing. I appreciate it.
That was just my own personal ethos. And I still am like your girlfriend, where I still have a fairly sensitive stomach. So going out to restaurants, it's less is more. I'm going to have, a plain piece of fish, plain piece of steak with some white rice, maybe one vegetable. You got a lot of sauces and spices and different ingredients. That's how I'm wired. I've been that way since I was a little kid. So yeah, it was kind of out of my personal necessity, you could say.
Yeah, man. What are some of the things people should look out for when it comes to nutrition labels? Because And I don't just mean, bad sugars and stuff like that. I kind of mean more on the ingredient side.
Yeah, I think, I mean, everyone is so different, right? We're like your needs are different than mine. Like for instance, it's hard for me to digest peanuts. I've just been that way since I was a little kid. I think what it's funny, there's so many new like adult onset allergies and sensitivities that are happening more and more, as you get closer to the age of 30, as you get closer to 40, it's like overnight. So I think for me, the awareness of the label for me, and I noticed with a lot of my friends, as they start to develop these sensitivities, you'd be surprised how many like little sub ingredients you'll find in some of your favorite snacks or like a beverage. There's just certain ingredients that you might not know you're sensitive to. Sesame oil is like a big one if you have sushi. And I think a lot of people are seeing just in general like new adult onset allergies. So I'm always cognizant. I feel like I think it's over. People sometimes are afraid of like sugar. I think there's a lot of negativity around sugar, but it's all in reference to who you are. I can metabolize sugar very well. A lot of people I know, other people, if they're diabetic or they're insulin sensitive, it's just being more mindful of that. But you shove a bunch of stuff into your body, it's so hard to isolate that one or two ingredients where you might be sensitive to. So it's
Yeah.
just being mindful based on your own needs and preferences. Some people have, billy goat stomachs. They can eat anything, anytime, anywhere.
I will say that's me. But I do notice what I've noticed is less natural foods. And again, I know some of the intricacies, but I really would not consider myself an expert at all. Things that, I don't understand or know exactly what they are, right? If I look at the back of, a rise bar label and I see almond, honey, whey protein isolate, like coconut, it's like I at least know what those are, and then maybe I'm insensitive to all those ingredients, but at least I'm kind of aware.
Right.
So I love that, man. And protein seems to be a real big factor for you. I think most of the listeners to this would understand the basics around protein, right, and building block for muscles. But is there a reason that you focus? It seems like all your food is all around protein. Is there a reason that
Yeah,
you focus on that?
that's been my preference. I've always been on more of a high protein diet, kind of a 1 gram per body weight type of person. We found that a lot of our consumers, though, are people, whether it's through a dietitian or a friend, they're looking to supplement with protein. The people who don't count calories or protein, they're not always going to be our customer. I think for me personally, though, if I can any way I can get another 10 or 15 grams in a snack on the go that's clean, that suits my own needs. Now, I always say like we're never going to have like a meal replacement. We're always going to be a supplementary snack. I always believe in clean whole foods for like 95% of what you consume every day. But for me, like protein is part of recovery, is part of feeling satiated after a meal. I work out really intensely, between competitive jujitsu and CrossFit and just outdoor water sports. So for me, that's essential to my recovery. I know if I eat too little, like I can kind of up my carbs and fat and play around with that quite a bit, but it's protein that keeps me the fullest. So once again, that's my own preference. And a lot of our customer base, they know like combining protein with a clean fat and carb, just like a well-balanced meal, a well-balanced snack, which also helps you with any kind of blood sugar imbalance, helps you with like a sustained energy boost, as opposed to just having a pure fat source or like a pure carb source.
Yeah, and that's where those nuts and the coconut could probably really help balance it out with the fat. 'Cause I'll say carbs are the easiest. Carbs are super easy to get, right. Everything's a carb.
Yep.
But I protein is killer, and it's funny. I am 5 days post an ultra marathon that I ran.
Wow.
So for the last 10 days, about 5 days leading up to it. And then, like go after it. It's been all carbs. I mean, lots of protein
For
and
sure.
well, let me start by saying it's been a lot of food in general, especially after. But I've had to eat a lot of carbs, and it's interesting. I understand how important it is carb load for the race, and then the next day or two after the race. After the race, I did change to a lot more protein heavy diet. But I'm with you, man. Like my diet, and I have pretty intense workouts, but I think this is for most people that like my best diet is clean whole foods, pretty balanced, but like you said, a focus on protein. If I go high or low on carbs or fats, it doesn't really matter. But if I don't get my protein, I'm sore the next day. I
Yeah.
don't recover as well. And when I say a good diet for me, I actually don't mean anything regard to like physique. I mean, you use the word energy levels. Like as an we're both entrepreneurs. Like energy is, I guess I don't think a lot of people are aware or make the connection of how like their food, makes them have that dip in energy, in the middle of the day or something. And that, I don't know. I feel that a lot if I don't eat cleanly.
I would say that's most people. You don't realize it during the day. You're at the office, you're grinding, and most of the time you're just, running off like pure adrenaline. And so but it starts to hit you like, especially as you get a little bit older. Like I just turned 40. And so I noticed over the last few years, kind of my body, my energy has shifted quite a bit. Not for the better or the worse, just different dips throughout the day. And so for me, I mean, diet's been more important than ever, especially the last couple of years.
Mm, that's really interesting. And yeah, running off adrenaline, man, that's not sustainable, but we've all been there.
Yep, I did that a lot in my 20s and definitely my 30s just running this company.
Yeah. Well, kind of want to shift a little bit if you don't mind. And I think that's like a good segue. What were you doing before you started this company? Let me ask that first.
I sold medical devices. I worked in spine, so any like surgical fixation devices, screws, rods, plates, nerve monitoring software. So did that for about 2.5 years on kind of the sales and then product management side. And then ultimately like wanted to really start my own company. My dad is an entrepreneur, my grandfather was, my great grandfather. So wanted to start something myself, and just felt like I've always been into fitness and nutrition. And I took about 6 months off in between to kind of just like brainstorm, think of ideas, kind of from ideation to ultimately like launching a business. But that before that was medical devices, and then before that was in graduate school.
Nice. And what was really the reason behind starting, this company?
I remember I read the 4 Hour Work Week. Um,
That's how I started.
for a lot of people, and the ethos behind that is still, I mean, spot on, I think. I was reading it on a flight back from the East Coast, and I remember like I landed around 9 or 10 p.m. On San Diego time, and I kept reading. I read it till 2 in the morning. That I just kind of sped through. I didn't expect. A buddy of mine recommended the book to me, and I remember I read through the whole flight. 4.5 hour flight, and then I got home. I finished it again a few hours later, and I remember like it kind of fundamentally shifted how I thought about just overall like life optimization, which is kind of an overused term, but how you carve out your different times of day, units of energy, and how you kind of bucket all these different categories so that it works for you personally. I although I knew I wanted to start a business, that was really kind of what pushed me over the edge. And so literally within like a month of reading that book, I quit my job.
That is a little bit uncanny. Where were you flying from? Do you recall?
I was from Washington, D.C.
Dude. All right. So I lived in Washington, D.C. I was given the book by a friend, Robert Burgess. I then hopped on a flight to San Diego one night, and I was going there. It was the day before Halloween. I was going there for work. I extended one day, so I was there 2 nights because of Halloween. And I read it the entire 4.5 hour duration of a flight from Washington, D.C. to San Diego. Landed in San Diego, had to go to the work event, started reading it. At this time, I was 25, right? So San Diego, Halloween. I even packed a costume. I was ready to put some beers back and have fun. Left it all there and spent the entire night reading. It's one of those books that, like, right now, if I showed you my copy, it looks like it
Mhm.
went through the war, right? Like,
Yeah, oh,
and
absolutely.
dude, that's crazy. DC to San Diego flights. I hope a lot of other people reading the 4 Hour Work Week. It's the best use of 4.5 hours, I think. But I agree with you. It changed my perspective, right? Um, For those who haven't read it, it is about the concept of working 4 hours a week, life optimization, as you said, and and the role that different things play. It's a very honest book, right? Like talking about how in the beginning you should really be trying to set up a muse for money, right? And I think I personally think that's spot on, right? Because um, a lot of times, well, actually, I don't know how wholeheartedly I feel about that, but because, but like, he just, the way he talks about like prioritizing things is incredibly like beautiful. So then coming out of that, you decided Rise Bar, and now and there's like a great mission behind what you guys are doing at Rise Bar too. So
Yeah, I
that's
mean, there were definitely a few ideations. Like I was looking at, would it be supplements? Would it be a beverage? It takes a while. There's actually courses, like the Founder Institute and other courses that will take you through a very structured, regimented, 6 to 8 week program to help you launch your business, where you meet, once a week, and then you have a lot of homework centered around how do we start our own company within 8 weeks. So that was really, the Founder Institute was really helpful. I know there's quite a few other programs like that now. This was, 12 years ago. But it definitely, I mean, I knew that that was the path I wanted to take. This just kind of pushed me over the ledge. But I didn't take 6 months off and just like, go vacation and relax. I really spent a lot of time, like a full-time job, looking at different ideas, talking to other entrepreneurs who had started companies, talking to other investors, bankers, anyone you can imagine, like within this overarching health and wellness space. So it definitely was not launched overnight. I mean, this was a long time coming. And even the first few years of the business, like I went through packaging changes, kind of ingredient changes, formula changes. So we've really, I spent the first 4 to 5 years just making a lot of mistakes, a lot of trial and error, which paved the way for like the last few years, which have been incredible for the company.
That's awesome. And congrats. I mean, you got to put in that hard work. And I like what you said, um, I wish I've had 6 months. I'll tell you, I lived in Hawaii I lived like nomadically. So the last 4 months of 2021, I lived in Hawaii. And from about December 15th to the end of the year, it's holiday time. Not a lot is going on in the industry I'm in, working, spend time with family. I was in Hawaii. No one was coming out to see me, but I surely wasn't leaving to go see them, right? And it was interesting. Didn't really have a lot of friends there. There's not a big social life up in Holualoa, which is on the Kona side of the Big Island. Very quiet town. And me and my girlfriend were like, we asked ourselves, what's the most unique about this situation, and how can we take advantage of that? And we realized like we just got a lot of quiet time. And yeah, we could have been, we could have and did spend time on the beach chilling and relaxing.
Yep.
But we spent a lot of time. I'm talking hour-long whiteboard sessions in a co-working space there, and long nights into or conversations into the night about like lifestyle design optimization type stuff, like you're talking about, like beating it up from every single angle and challenging things. And um I look back at that as one of the most beautiful times of like my life. And even though it was recent, just because, I was able to like take a step back for a second, take a breath. And, it's amazing that you were able to get, you earned your way to 6 months, time for that. So I think
Yeah,
that's
I mean,
important.
even now though, it presents an opportunity, I think, for anyone, no matter what phase you're at, to kind of have those whiteboard moments. I mean, it's such a, you hear this over and over again. It's such a busy world, and we're always hyped looking for the next dopamine rush and just sensory overload. And so I think my wife and I, like, we're actually going to be going, we're taking a trip kind of the end of August. We're still brainstorming where we're going to go. But just going somewhere for just us two for a week, and kind of doing the same approach, not necessarily with the big whiteboard, but the idea of, what do we want this next phase of our life to look like, before we have a second child? Like, do we want to live where we're at? Do we want to stay in these same kind of career paths? What do our friends look like? How close are we with our families? How connected are we with each other? And so I think it's just like that moment in time, me turning 40, it just, I put, a stake in the ground and said, I really want to reassess what I want to do, with these next 40 years plus. certainly like in my 40s, like in my 20s, like you always try a bunch of different stuff, try different roles just to kind of see what sticks. In your 30s, you kind of try to find out what you're good at. And I think then that's, lends its way to your 40s. Like, okay, now I think now I know what I'm good at. Here's how I want to design the next, decade or two of my life. And just for us to enjoy each other, knowing that there's always going to be challenges. You don't need a plan for challenges. Like, shit comes at you in life. It's just inevitable. And even not to you, your spouse, your partner, friends, family around you. But I think it's just the big picture moment, like, okay, let's take a step back, put down the phones, the laptop. Let's just talk and figure out what we want things to look like. Nothing ever goes according to plan, but it's so important, like for rest, recovery, for your brain, just to have that breathing room to grow. It's like muscles. You overtrain your brain, your emotions, your mindset. Everything needs time for rest and recovery. So I realized I didn't do enough of that in my 30s. I was just constantly just grinding, pushing, and just really facing burnout more than a few times.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you sharing that. I know it's not always easy to admit when we're, feeling burnout or things like that. And I resonate with that, and I hope you get the best out of, your experience. And I would say, prepare for the best and keep expectations low, right? You might leave and not feel like you have a revolutionary thought, but it's there, you're always on the right path. I have a question for you because I feel like we're similar in this regard. My father is perplexed at my continued obsession with happiness, right? And he almost says like it's a paradox. Like, what are you obsessed with? Just be it. And I come from the angle, like I truly feel pretty grateful moment to moment, which I think leads to happiness. I'm curious about this next level of self actualization within happiness. I want to kind of figure out how to get there. And I also have this belief, which maybe this belief is why I'm obsessed with it, but it's like exercising. Like, I know right now I'm in great shape, right? I just finished an ultra marathon. I'm lifting hard. I'm eating well. That doesn't mean I'm just in shape for the rest of my life, guaranteed, right? You have to continue to earn it. So those two things are really the drivers behind my obsession, right? My curiosity for, is there like this further feeling sensation? Can it be permanent? And then the fact that I do believe we need to practice what we're looking to accomplish. I mean, you've had these very intentional moments. You're very clearly focused on it as well. Do you know what your driver is?
Well, I have to be transparent and saying, like, I know my personality, my mindset. I'm not hardwired for happiness. I'm one of those people who we're naturally a little bit more down and out, naturally a little bit tougher on ourselves, and find it more difficult just to be. My wife is just cheerful, natural, like morning lark, just one of these people who's naturally relaxed and laid back. That's just how she's wired. So for me, I do find like it's definitely more of a practice. Like Tim Ferriss says himself, like that wasn't always his natural set point. He's really had to work at that and change his own belief system to realize, I can change to be more hardwired for happiness. I can change my habits, my routine, my belief systems. And so that's something that I've had to work on a lot over the last few years. I think so for me, it's always been more of a practice. I just didn't know. I couldn't figure out why in my 30s, like things were going well, and I still didn't feel this sense of contentment, this sense of inner fulfillment. And so for me, it's been a practice. It's a work in progress, and it will be. That's just kind of been my natural set point.
Yeah. I appreciate the strength and the humility there. That's awesome, man. Not a lot of people have that. I definitely don't naturally. As I kind of mentioned, I would say I don't battle with that as much. I do battle with in ego, right? And I sometimes find it very difficult to
Sure.
admit weakness or anything like that, which not being able to admit a weakness is a weakness, right? So it's like It's funny there, but you're so right. And I hope people take that as inspiration. Like there's a programming, and then there's your habits, which are dictate like your environment, right? And then there's also shit that gets thrown at you. There are things you can do. It's not easy, like you said, but you can
No,
affect your programming.
not at all.
You can totally affect your programming. You can totally affect the way that you perceive what happens to you. And then you can affect your habits, which, affect it. And yeah, it's not easy. You might not get it for a while. You might get it and then lose it, right? But it can be changed. Do you have any specific habits? Obviously, exercising, keeping good relationship with your family. I can tell this stuff's important. I don't know, any gurus you follow or meditations you like to do or anything like that?
I think for me, it's kind of it's a vague term that you can't really nail down, but I noticed that when I find myself teetering, it's where I feel like completely out of whack, the work-life balance, where I'm working way too intensely. I'm not sleeping well. That's where and I have a few triggers. There's always like a major life stressor of some sort. Typically it's been work related, but there's this one kind of straw that breaks the camel's back. And so I've been more cognizant of what those triggers are, where I know like a Ferrari that's overheating, like you don't want to wait till it's overheated, so to speak. I think I've had to build in more, really it's for me taking more breaks throughout the day, whether you're working a typical office job. I think now that it's been a more favorable environment than ever to be able to take some time away, to take micro breaks throughout the day. I mean, I wear a Whoop band now, just to kind of track, fitness, HRV, where I know like, wow, I'm completely out of whack. I can see like my energy levels and in my HRV, what's going on. But really, I think for me, what I made the commitment to this year, kind of um, my resolution was to take more time out of the office, like micro breaks throughout the day, even if it's like a 5-minute walk around the block. And then also on weekends, I can't tell you like how many weekends I worked. And even if it's just 3, 4, 5 hours, that's still like it drains from our kind of our life purpose. We're not just built to work. We're human beings, not human doings. And I think that's where I've tried. And my
Yeah.
daughter's really helpful there, is just spending time present with her on the weekends, not having to watch TV, not being glued to my laptop, phone, not even no business books, just being, taking a few hours and just being mindful of that. I think it's easy in your 20s or 30s and you throw away a lot of your weekends, whether you're working too hard or you're just out super late, you have too many drinks, and you're never fully like present, so to speak. And I think those bad habits can kind of carry into the second half of life. So I think
Yeah.
for me, I've taken a much more targeted approach, and I probably do, you know, 7 or 8 different behaviors per day now to really work on this. And I think that's to some people it might be robotic because it just comes naturally to them. There was a few people that I noticed in some of your podcasts. I'm like, okay, this dude or this person is just they're wired that way, which is really really cool. My wife is that way. That's why I married her. But for the rest of us, like it's work. It's really work to feel contentment and a sense of ease and to just relax.
Yeah.
And it's just so incredibly important for age.
Yeah, man. There's definitely a lot to unpack there. But first of all, like keep the work going. I mean, I will tell you that again, I definitely feel like it does come naturally, and I feel like I have to work at it still. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
And I have to work at it hard, right? And it's what I've found was we're in an age of abundance right now, right? So what I mean by that, like you're tracking your heart rate variability, and we're talking about like different ingredients on food and all sorts of things, right? There's a million things, and you should educate yourself and you should find the habits that work for you. But I know it can get overwhelming. The guy that I mentioned earlier, Rob, who gave me the book, I actually spoke to him recently and goes, Sean, like, I'm trying to meditate more. I'm trying to get more natural sunlight. I'm trying to walk more. I'm trying to spend more time with my family. Like, what do I prioritize? I'd love to understand your take on that, because I've resolved to that my number one priority is to try to increase my awareness. And I do that through either meditation or things that naturally draw on your awareness, right? Like exercise generally does, but it generally it does need to be performance exercise, right? Like
Yep.
trying to lift the heaviest weight you can, run as far as you can, those things, because they really narrow your, like, you can't be hitting a PR on bench press and thinking about, laundry that you have to do. Um, because I find that, like, if you really increase your awareness, some days, man, I have it, and so many days I just don't. Like, I know I just drift through the day, and it crushes me when I reflect. But when you have that awareness, you will naturally go, I got to stand up and get outside, right? Like, I got to take a walk, get some sunlight. I should move the body. I should put the laptop down. This isn't urgent. I spend time with my daughter, right? Or, hey, this is urgent. I do need to open the laptop for 20 minutes or whatever. Do you have, I know you shared some of those habits. Have you found that same struggle that I had? Because I felt like I was juggling, man. I remember my morning to-do list was like this long, and
Yeah.
it was definitely something I had to work through.
No, I mean, I think it's, there's no magic bullet, right? I think every approach is uniquely different, whatever suits you as a human. For some people, there's meditation just flat out doesn't work. They're better off going for a more active meditation, like a walk outside for 10 minutes and just noticing more of like a sensory, taking in the five senses, as opposed to sitting still like a zombie and just being mindful of breath for 50 minutes. Like that's difficult for a lot of people. I think for other people, they don't prioritize sleep enough. But for some people, like sleep isn't that critical. I have friends who they thrive off, 5.5, 6 hours of sleep, and they swear by that. And they can tell, like, between their parents, their grandparents, that you can live into in your 80s and 90s taking this minimal, like a 5.5 or 6 hour a night approach. You don't need 8 or 9 hours like a professional athlete. So it's so variable. Like I've done this all by trial and error. What's uniquely different about me and unique to my own body type, my chronotype, and my own habits, behaviors, and mental health, because it's so different from every other individual. And I've read, probably like you, just hundreds of books on life optimization, on self-improvement, the human condition, on lifestyle construction. And
Yeah.
it's so different for everyone. Like there's not one book I could hand to someone and it's just this light bulb moment, because it might be for 2 out of 3 people, 2 out of 5, but it's unique to them. It's whatever kind of resonates with you at a particular time. But I would say, like, I am not regimented by the hour, because then I feel locked in. So it's not like wake up at 7, cold water bath, meditation, then let me go walk, then let me read an inspirational book. Like I can't be regimented throughout my day like that, organizing things in 30-minute increments. I have blocks of time. Like here's some things I want to do in the morning, in the afternoon, kind of in early evening, but I can't live and die by a calendar. That's one thing I've realized. I was so regimented the first few years, first half, 5 or 6 years of my entrepreneurial career, that I realized, like, that this is not good for my own mental health, is having this crazy calendar of to-dos every 30 minutes. Like that's even worse for my mental health. Like what are the biggest 2 or 3 things I can accomplish that continue to keep the ball moving forward? Everything else is just it's fluff. It'll find a way to get done or eliminated.
Yeah. Yeah. Prioritizing, man, I appreciate you sharing that. That's something I could definitely learn from. I find liberation in structure, and having that structure, but
Yeah.
at the same time, it, like, it can quickly slip away from you, right? And become the exact opposite of the intention. Because like you're saying, right? Like there's there's that like, now I need to do all this. And sometimes you're not even like thinking, is this what's important? That comes back to that awareness thing. Like that's why I've really prioritized things that increase my awareness. And now the beauty of that is, when your awareness is at a peak, you're generally enjoying life, right? Like they did tons of brain scans, right? That's when, dopamine is up. and you're just enjoying, it even increases like memory, a lot going on in the prefrontal cortex. And there, that if you really think about things that increase your awareness, uh, deep, meaningful conversations like this, exercise, strategizing your business, creative outlets for your business or personal. Generally, it's fun shit. It's generally, stuff that might not be as like, doing, I guess, handling data, like analyzing stuff like that, which it definitely can be too. But yeah, I think prioritizing, like you mentioned, is really important. I realized something. I actually had a podcast 2 days ago, and like, yeah, sometimes I get these light bulbs going on in these shows, and I realized something I need to do is say no more. I tend to say yes to a lot of things in my business. Do you want to start focusing on social media? Yeah. Do you want to start focusing on influencers? Yeah. Like, it's like, when, if you look back at it, if you just crush this one thing, everything else will
Sure.
be
That's,
figured.
yeah, I think, I mean, the more entrepreneurial books you read, it really all does that. You could have a bunch of ideas, but it all boils down to like focus, right? It's kind of like who do you fear? Someone who knows 10,000 moves, or like the Bruce Lee quote, just a guy who's only done one move 10,000 times. Like, focus is so crucial. And I've been guilty of that. Like, I want to launch a new product, or I go too deep in social media with influencer marketing, and then I want to focus on something completely out of the ordinary. And it's like, what is that one big idea what is that one area of for me that I can place all my focus on that's going to drive this business forward? And I learned too many different times the hard way, the first, like I said, 5 or 6 years, that you're just never going to be able to juggle more than a few balls at once, if at all. You just want like that laser focus. I noticed that the brands who've done so well, you can see like they all stand for one thing that's very clear that they're really, really good at. That's what almost every business book, Good to Great, that's what they've almost all kind of narrowed down on, is what can you really focus on? And
Yeah.
that's the hardest thing in this day and age.
Yeah. That's 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 useful. Focus wins. I had a sales mentor that used to say that all the time. Focus wins. When people lose sight of that, it's crazy. It's kind of crazy what happens. And there's another quote I heard. You're talking about juggling. About if you're going to try to juggle, you have to understand you'll drop the ball sometimes. So you kind of just need to be aware of that mentally, from a business standpoint. Like, things will go wrong if you're trying to juggle, which, hey, we all have to juggle, right? At some points, but if you can really get straight on your priorities, I think, relating to what we talked about in the beginning, right? Get some quiet, focused time, and don't use that time to watch TV, get drunk, whatever. Use that time, like, take walks and think and journal and talk to people. If you get that focus and then dedicate yourself to that focus, sounds like a successful formula. And it's probably what's working so well for Rise.
In general, I think, I having been in so many other entrepreneur groups, I think we all tell each other, we encourage each other with the same thing. Like, dude, you have too many things going on. Like, what's the one thing that you can do better than anyone over these next 6 months that's going to move the business forward? But we get excited by bright, shiny objects. It's part of like that entrepreneurial ADD, and that's also exciting. But it's almost manic, where you end up kind of going on all these different kind of wormholes and rabbit holes, and it gets to be overwhelming, and that's when you end up burning out. And so for me, that being mindful on what's the number one thing I can do over these next 6 months to move the business for the rest of the year. And so for me, like, it rotates every 6 months. I don't know why I find like having these kind of 6 month increments works for me. I feel like a quarter is not enough. A year is too long. And so for me, I'm working entirely on, business development. How do we create brand awareness for Rise Bar? Nothing else, not working on, I'm not going to focus too much more on product innovation. I think we have a really good set. It's now, how do we grow our consumer awareness? And so that's
Yeah.
like the biggest initiative. But it rotates every 6 months. Before, it's like, how do we improve product quality? Then it was like, how do I hire the right people and replace the people who are not working? It kind of rotates every 6 months. That just works well for me.
But regardless of 6 months, whatever, it's the power of goals. It's something that I admittedly haven't been so good at. So I appreciate you sharing the way that's working for you, and I kind of want to dive into it with you because so we're talking about exercise, right? I'm someone I consider myself through and through an athlete, right? And I'm really not necessarily one now, but I wouldn't say like I'm a runner, but I just signed up for that ultra marathon that I did 5 days ago, right? It was just because I'm like, dude, I trained so hard. What am I training for, right? And it's not that I achieved this goal. I complete this ultra marathon. Wow, now I'm a successful, happy person. It's more kind of it gets my systems in place, right? When I'm training for this, I'm eating right, sleeping right, training right. Um, and I found that when you set goals and they're clear and you kind of have a plan to achieve them, they kind of just happen. And it's crazy. And if you look through, and I don't say that with anything but gratitude. And you can't have conflicting goals. I've realized I used to have a lot of conflicting goals, right? I want to do these 10 things and work less. Well, it's like, okay, well, which one? You have to have clarity. I think you have to focus on it like mentally and spiritually as well as take action on it, right? You can't just sit and meditate on it. I don't know. How do you find like goal setting? Like, so do you go through like every 6 months and really like set goals and that's just like, I need to achieve this type thing or?
I typically take the last week of the year, first week of the new year, kind of that last week of December. Things are always slow, so that's where I kind of look at like my yearly goals, so to speak, for the business. From an athletic perspective, I really I change my workout regimen, like my structure, my program, typically every 8 weeks, so every 2 months. But one of the things I realized is just kind of you have to measure things, and you don't want to overkill yourself with data. But I know, like from a business perspective, from working out, you've got to measure it. I can't just have like a feeling. I really need to be a little bit more concrete. I'm not and you that's why you can only have like a few different kind of goals or milestones you're looking for. So I look at that. So my fitness goals are every couple months, and then my yearly planning goals are always that last week of the year, first week of the new year.
Yeah. Te Tell me a little bit about like the fitness goals. Like so you're saying that you need to measure everything. I believe that too because what's they say, what gets measured gets managed, right? Um, it just we all want to not measure things, and I live on both sides of the coin. Um, Again, I'm trying to get my squat to this. I'm trying to run this fast, whatever. You achieve those goals, nothing's going to happen. Your life's not going to be better.
Right.
But like you do train, like by setting these goals and measuring it, you do then train harder and have a more mindful experience and holistic experience. Like all those things that like seem to like not be related to like the specific goal really are. That's been my experience. I don't know.
Yeah.
Does that resonate with you?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I know what you're saying, like the two sides of the coin. I would say that I notice when I do, and once again, I try not to measure to death. Like when I start a workout, I don't measure my body fat or my weight. Those things don't mean anything to me. I know, like if I can do, whether squats or a movement or my mobility, which I can measure, especially now that I'm 40, just measuring like my mobility in general. Not keeping it, not trying to overkill with data, but just what is the one thing I can do, like this stretch, this pose, yoga, that I know like I can objectively see that I've improved over the last 2 or 3 months. But I don't measure everything. Definitely not. I don't count calories. I know a lot of people do. And in some cases they need to. I think it can be really important, but for me, there's just certain areas of my life like I don't need to measure anymore. So like I said, it's almost if I can't count it on one hand, like it's not going to get done.
Yeah, yeah. I yeah, I don't count calories either. I would say it's out of laziness, more than anything. But I do want it to be fairly intuitive as well. Like I kind of, like you mentioned in the beginning, like I kind of understand like how much to eat. I do want that too. Um, hmm. That's pretty interesting. Do you count macros or anything or no?
I used to. I think at this point, like I intuitively know what's going to work with my body. And I don't have a big stomach. Like I'm not a big eater. So I've never had to worry about like overeating, undereating sometimes, like for performance, for energy levels. I still, for the life of me, I know there's some ultra marathoners who can fast and they do keto. I have no, like that doesn't work for my body. I'm like really envious of those guys who can intermittent fast and just eat one meal a day, 3,000 calories. I just know that doesn't work for me. I'll have my 3 or 4 smaller meals throughout the day, and I'm incredibly happy. Anytime I have one larger meal, it's just, I just know it's no go. But
Yeah.
I can't count calories. It gets too obsessive for a lot of people, and then you kind of fall into the trap of vanity, and then just constant disappointment. So I can't play that game anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm definitely with you, but there's a part of me that wants to like test it. I believe in trying everything, so I think I might
Sure.
test it. I've never done it. I've never really had interest in it. But I kind of agree. More like education, trying to be intuitive, and just kind of like understanding, right? Like I can think back today. I've had my protein shake in the morning, which is really well balanced with carbs, fats, high protein, and a lot of micronutrients. Um, then I did like let's see, like a chicken sausage, kind of like egg, vegetable, little scramble. So, and that's definitely high in protein, low in carbs and fats. And then I had like 2 rice cakes with like fruit and some honey and some peanut butter, some like seeds on it. So like after that one, that's high in carbs. I should probably have a pretty low carb, high protein dinner, I would say. It didn't get that many vegetables. I have like green powder, which, like
Mhm.
you said, it's okay, but it's not a whole food. Um, and like that's kind of the more like how I look at things, right? Is more like, okay, so for dinner, hopefully, chicken, fish, turkey, and a lot of veggies is kind of what I'd be looking for, which is generally a safe bet, but
Yeah, yep. I've just learned over the course, like I said, a lot of trial and error. I mean, the industry I'm in, health and wellness, you can imagine, I'm surrounded by a lot of other entrepreneurs. So you have a lot of groupthink, and just kind of a meeting of the mind. So I've learned a lot from other people, but ultimately it does come, it's personal trial and error, goal setting, whatever your, whatever avenue you want to take in life. It's so incredibly personal that you can't learn from books. You can't really learn from other people. There's always, I get great tips and insight, but I'm the only one who knows my own brain, my own body. That's kind of what it boils down to.
I would love to wrap it up on that note because to me, that's the main takeaway from everything that I've tested. It sounds like you too. I'm trying to write a book right now. I should say I'm writing a book. It's just going slowly. And one of the chapters is going to be called Practitioners versus Students. And um, both are equally important. I don't want to say like there's no, education's not important, but I've just found that a lot of times we listen to people that are educated and maybe don't practice it. And like, if someone's gonna like tell me about like I'm sorry, if someone's gonna be my personal trainer or nutritionist, they need to be consistent high levels of energy, consistent good mood, in great physical shape. Like I need to see that they're doing it and studied. So I just love that we're on the same wavelength there. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's, and I always find the same thing. And wrapping this up, it's people always ask, what advice do you have for entrepreneurs? And I always say, man, I don't know. Like I don't know you personally. I don't know your habits, who you are, what you want to do, your interests. Because people always say, should I start my own company? What should I do? What's the one thing I should do? And I'll be honest and say I don't know what to say. I just don't know nearly enough about that person. Like the professor who teaches entrepreneurship. I'm like, well, have you actually run a company? I don't know what it's like until your feet are in the fire and you lose a customer or you have a really bad employee experience and you're almost out of money. Like I don't know what you're like until like literally your life is on the line and the company could live or die. And that's why for me, it's like, I don't know you personally. Like I'm happy to kind of, spend some time over a whiskey and share my experiences. I just hope they can be helpful to you, but I can't give you one advice that I think is going to take you to the next level, other than what we talked about is like focus. But like you just don't know if someone can get punched in the face until you're actually punched in the face.
Yeah. And like just like kind of building on that, I think a lot of times people ask, wait, I will, like you said, I'll give advice over to anybody, that's willing to listen, or that's interested, I should say, and looking for it. But I definitely much more, if someone's interested in getting advice from me, but I much more appreciate if someone comes in and says like, hey Peter, like I'm looking to start, a consumer packaged good business. I've done the research here and I have a question about this and this. Like it's like, wow, they're serious and they wanted to waste their time before they wasted my time.
Yeah.
And
Well,
that means a lot, because a lot of times someone's like, oh, like what business should I start? It's like, dude, I mean, how can I help with that?
yeah.
Even if I give you an answer, it won't go anywhere. Well, Peter, man, you've obviously, accomplished quite a bit. And I loved hearing the backstory about not just, the Rise Bar stuff, but about how you're keeping yourself healthy and well, mentally. And, I appreciate you taking the last almost 40 years, I think you said, and cultivating this knowledge and sharing it with us, and then taking the time to go through this on the.
Still a lot left to learn. That's the exciting part. A lot left to learn.
Dude, absolutely, man. Well, I appreciate you so much, and I look forward to the next time we connect, Peter.
Thanks, Sean. Good to chat with you. Good catching up.
Hey, thank you for watching today's episode. If you got something out of this, it would mean so much if you could just take a second and give us a rating on whatever platform you're watching it on. And it would mean so much to the world if you could just find one person that you think this message resonates with and you can share that with them. Thank you so much for your support. Looking forward to share the next episode with you.